Hi everyone, I am Meenakshi and I welcome you all to Tathastu. So as you can see, today we are going to discuss a very important topic which have been asked many times in UPSC examination, and it is El Nino. And today we will be discussing about how it can be India's #1 economic and political risk, with special focus on 2024 Lok Sabha election. We all know that general elections will be held next year. Lok Sabha elections are held in every 5 years. Before moving on, these are the courses which are offered by Tathastu-ICS MSLV, which specifically focus on your mains program. Admission are open, you can get yourself enrolled in it. And CRT module is also offered by Tathastu-ICS. Then PSLV, which will specifically focus on your prelims examination, will be launched very soon. And lastly, the philosophy optional by Tanu ma'am. So you can also get enrolled in this if your optional is philosophy. Chalo. Moving on, starting our lecture, El Nino's arrival as a prominent weather phenomenon. So El Nino is basically a weather phenomenon which takes place in Eastern Tropical Pacific Ocean. So you have to remember the name of the ocean. It is Eastern Tropical Pacific Ocean. I hope you can read it. In India, now the arrival of El Nino in India has both economic and political implication, as the nation gears for the general election scheduled to held in April or May 2024, which are held after every 5 years. Now, El Nino's consequences are already being seen due to its well-known capacity to reduce. So one of the consequence of El Nino is reduced rainfall, which may result in drought. So the consequences are already being felt because there have been very less rainfall in the month of August this year, and of course the reduced rainfall affects our agricultural cycle. So these consequences are already being felt by our country. Now moving on, what is El Nino? Let's see. What is El Nino? Apart from El Nino, there is one more weather phenomenon which is known as La Nina. So El Nino and La Nina, they are two opposites. So they are two opposite phases of the El Nino Southern Oscillation cycle, and we have seen they occur in Pacific Ocean. So please remember the ocean. It may be, if UPSC want to trick you and give you a very simple question, they may ask the name of the ocean as well. So ENSO, which is El Nino Southern Oscillation, this is a naturally occurring phenomenon. So please focus on the keywords always when you are reading about a topic, when you are reading about a concept. Focus on the keyword that it is a naturally occurring phenomenon which involves interaction between ocean and atmosphere in the equatorial Pacific. So this is very important, that it is naturally occurring. It involves interaction between ocean and atmosphere and in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So what happens? The sea surface temperatures are exceptionally warm. So these are some features of El Nino. We will also understand the difference between these two phenomena, which are completely opposite, El Nino and La Nina. So the sea surface temperature are exceptionally warm, and it helps every 2 to 7 years. And if we talk about the frequency, it stays for few months to a year or maybe longer than that. Now trade winds are winds which permanently move towards the equator, blows towards the equator. They become weaker during this phenomenon. So when El Nino occurs, what happens? That the trade winds become weaker, and which in turn causes the wind patterns to shift. Now when the wind pattern shift, that will definitely have an impact on the rainfall, which will have an impact on our agriculture as well. So all these are related concepts or related phenomena. So these trade winds during the time of El Nino, they become weaker, and it causes the wind patterns to shift. Now when the wind patterns are shifting, when the wind patterns are changing, rainfall will decrease and may result in droughts, and it may impact our agricultural cycle as well. And during this time, temperatures are warmer. We have seen exceptionally warm sea surface temperatures. So temperatures are warmer, and on different continents, what is the impact? There are droughts in Africa and Asia and floods in America, as during this El Nino phenomenon, precipitation may increase specifically in the southern America. Now, what is La Nina, the other weather phenomenon which is opposite to El Nino? So, if you remember El Nino, it will be easier for you to remember this because they are opposite words. You just have to use opposite terms. Here you have cooler temperature, whereas in El Nino you had warmer temperature. It occurs at the same frequency as well. Time duration 2 to 7 years, and frequency is same from few months to a year or maybe longer than that. Now, trade winds which become weaker during El Nino, they become strengthened or stronger, which also causes the pattern to shift. And when the pattern will shift, it will affect the rainfall, and the rainfall will affect our agricultural cycle. So it increases rainfall. What we have seen in El Nino, that it decreases rainfall, but here it increases rainfall and can cause flooding. Incessant rains can always cause floods. So temperatures are cooler. We have seen temperatures are cooler during this phenomenon, and now this is opposite. Droughts in Africa and Asia during El Nino, but floods in Africa and Asia because the rainfall increases. So there may be flood in Africa and Asia, and droughts in America because there will be less rainfall over there. Now, what is the impact on our country, on India? So related to India's weak monsoon season and drought-like conditions. So when El Nino arrives, the monsoon is weaker in India and it may create drought-like condition. The equatorial Pacific Ocean sea surface temperature increases or get warm. We have seen in El Nino, the sea surface temperature is exceptionally warm. So the equatorial Pacific Ocean temperature may increase during this time above normal levels, and the pattern of atmospheric circulation are altered. We have seen how wind pattern changes, specifically trade winds, which affect the rainfall as well. Now, a change in jet stream's position would impact the strength and direction of monsoon wind as well. So this may also cause a change in jet stream, which may then impact the monsoon winds as well. And when monsoon winds are impacted, that may change the rainfall patterns, which may then change our agricultural cycle. So what happens during this time? Reduced rainfall causes dry spells and heat waves, which causes agricultural failure and a water shortage. So this is basically a global pattern, but what that has an impact on our country, this is the impact what El Nino have on our country. The pattern of atmospheric circulation are altered, jet stream patterns are changed, then it may reduce rainfall, cause dry spell or heat waves, because heat waves are created when there are less rainfall also. So broader consequences, we will now see the broader consequences with respect to agriculture or the food inflation or the political consequences. Beginning from agriculture, number one, how rainfall deficit. Rainfall, definitely we have seen, I have said it multiple times that rainfall affects our agricultural cycle very much. So the early so here we are talking about this year only. So during this year, the 4.2 excess rainfall from the southwest monsoon usually arrives on 1st of June. The dates may slightly vary sometimes because of the weather conditions, but mostly it arrives by 1st of June. So 4.2% surplus rain from the southwest monsoon has been eliminated. Why? Because during this month, during August, countrywide rainfall is at 30.7% below normal. So usually we expect more rainfall in month of August, but in this year it is 30.7% below the normal levels. Now it is because of the El Nino phenomenon. Now El Nino is strengthening. In July, the oceanic Nino index reached 1 degree Celsius and it has exceeded the El Nino threshold, which is indicating the intensification of the El Nino phenomenon, and which may have changed this rainfall pattern. Now, what is the projected persistence? If we talk about the predictions, prediction indicates that El Nino will persist and maybe strengthen over the winters of 2023. So by the end of this year, this phenomenon may get more strengthened and can affect our this cycle, which will affect our agriculture, and in turn it will affect our food cycle as well, which will cause inflation. We will discuss this also. Let's complete this. That the predictions indicate that this El Nino will persist and strengthen during the winters or during the later part of this year actually, with likely effects on northeast monsoon. So northeast monsoon basically we I expect in winters, in particularly in state of Tamil Nadu, and winter season. So this is the cause of how El Nino may affect the northeast monsoon. Now, what are the issues with the food supply because of this particular phenomenon? How this weather pattern can impact our food supply? So important monsoon, as we talk about monsoon, we have expected or we have get low rainfall than we expect. So in addition to increasing crop productivity, the southwest monsoon, so here we are talking about the southwest monsoon. So what does it do? It recharges groundwater, maintains the balance of the groundwater table, and restocks reservoirs as well, which are both crucial for our agricultural success. We need irrigation facilities specifically for some crops. So this is what southwest monsoon do to us, but in August the rainfall has been less, so it may impact the productivity of the crop. Now if we talk about seasonal influence, water supplies primarily derived from aquifers. So what are aquifers? Basically a rock which have the capacity of holding water. So the water supplies which have been primarily derived from aquifers and reservoirs are below the normal level this year, and they are crucial to success of Rabi season crops like wheat, mustard and chickpea. So basically we know that we have majorly two seasons, which is Rabi season and Kharif season. So these water supplies are really important, specifically from the southwest monsoon. If we talk about southwest monsoon, it is very important for our agricultural productivity. And if we talk about the demand supply nexus, El Nino induced shortage may make food inflation worries worse, because if we talk about the stockpiles of rice and wheat this year, they are at a 6-year low, and the food inflation is 6-year low, and food inflation is 11.5%. So here we talk about the demand supply nexus. The El Nino induced shortages may make food inflation worries, because if the agriculture would not be productive, then the demand would be same but supply would reduce. Okay, how this demand would be same, and if the supply is not same, it is reduced, then the prices of that particular commodity will go up. This is how it can affect our demand supply nexus. Moving on to one of the most important consequences, the political consequences, how it can affect our general elections this year. So food inflation has significant impact on political results. Now if we talk about the needs of a common man, what does a common man need? Roti, kapda or makan. So this food inflation, when the common man would not be able to afford the items he want to eat, then definitely he will have some problems with government. There's so much inflation, I can't buy even one time meal. So this is the reason, that is, food inflation has a significant impact on political result, and this has been shown by an analysis of consumer food price inflation before the 2019 Lok Sabha election. So this food inflation plays a very crucial role in our elections. Now if we talk about election influence, the degree of food inflation during those time was partly responsible for BJP's 2019 electoral success and UPS. Here we are talking about 2014 general elections. Food inflation has been considered as one of the major cause for the defeat of the previous ruling party. Now we talk about action by the government. The government has already taken measures. So what can government do? They can curb this inflation if they start preparing from now only. So the government has already taken measures which can assure food availability. Stop stockpiling. Stockpiling is one of the major causes of inflation, where the demand supply nexus is destroyed. and it addresses potential food inflation concerns as well. So this is how this weather phenomenon could have an impact on our political elections or the Lok Sabha elections. Now, if we talk about the navigation priorities, how the government should prioritize, what the measures need to be taken as the impacts of El Nino persist, and we have seen that it will strengthen more during the later part of this year or by the winters of this year, and Lok Sabha elections in 2020 draw near. The government may take additional steps to stabilize the food supply. So here we are talking about food inflation. Broadly, we are talking about food inflation, that how this pattern in simple terms, if we need to understand or conclude. So we have seen that it will affect rainfall. El Nino reduces rainfall. This rainfall will reduce the agricultural productivity, right? It will reduce the agricultural productivity, which in turn will impact demand, supply and excess, right? It will impact the demand, supply and excess, and then it can lead to food inflation. If we want to summarize it, we can say that we have broadly studied 4 points, that rainfall will decrease the agricultural productivity, it will then broke this demand, supply and excess. Demand would be same, supply would be less, and that this in turn would lead to food inflation. So if we talk about the balancing act, that how the government would balance it, so the government will aim to reduce short-term food inflation. So first of all, the government aim will be to curb this food inflation in short term. Usually when we study, we also make targets for short term. We make day target actually, that we have to complete this in a day. Then we make weekly targets. Then we make monthly target. This is how the government will also try to do. It would try to aim to reduce these short term food inflation. But these policies, now these policies may be, so this is how the government would be balancing it. It may be bit difficult for them because these policies may conflict with the previously passed farm reform legislation which were passed by the government, and it may underscore the dichotomy which is managed or which is maintained between the short-term policy changes and in the long-term structural adjustment. So it is up to the government how they will balance it. Now if we talk about conclusion, the rise of El Nino as a powerful environmental, and so this conclusion you can use in your answers as well. So the rise of El Nino, the strengthening of El Nino is a powerful environment and political force. So we have seen how it will affect the weather patterns, how it will affect our economy, and from those economic changes, how it can affect our what can be the political consequences. So it highlights the complex interaction between the weather patterns, as I have said, the agricultural and the political process. So this El Nino will bring the connection between these three forces, the weather patterns, the agricultural and the political process. And India's capacity to solve urgent issues while taking longer term objective into account would depend on our ability to manage the extensive effect of El Nino on food supply and specifically inflation, the food inflation. That was all about El Nino and its economic and political impact. I hope you found the session interesting. If you find it, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.